In this lesson, we're going to look at the device control layer. This is a special layer, like the interlock layer, that allows us to control our devices. So just like the interlocks, we have a UDT, but inside that UDT, we have instances of our assets, like specific control layer. So let's just have a look at what that looks like. So in our UDT device control layer, you will see AVO1, MVO2. We only have two types of assets in this example, quarter turn valve and the modulating valve. And we'll notice that when we look at the devices, we have our auto enable and mode for quarter turn valve. And for modulating valve, we have auto enable, requested position, which is what we want it to go to in auto, fail position, where we want it to fail to, and no control position, where we want it to go when auto enable is not enabled. That's a very useful pin to have because we might want to drive to 0%, we might want to open to 100%, or we might just want to stay exactly where it is if the control is removed. So in order to do that, in order to write to these from our sequence layers, where we're controlling the filter sequences, we need some sort of mechanism that gets information from our sequences to this block here, the device block. And this is where this control layer comes in. So we can see quarter turn valves have simply auto enable, and the modulating valves have auto enable, requested position, fail position, no control position. So there's two ways you can do this. We can either create an instance of this UDT and poke them into the interface, or we can update our modulating valve manager and quarter turn valve manager so that they accept these UDT instances as in-out variables, just like we've done with the data and alarm group and everything else that's being used with UDTs. It's better to update these to accept these inputs or these in-outs, because if we ever modify our assets in the future and need to update the control layer, then we know that our manager will update as well. But I'm not going to do that in this video. It will just be updated after this lesson. But let's have a look at creating the instance of this now then. So just like we did with interlocks, we have device control layer, which I'll just open. And in here, we would have typed and then UDT device control layer. And in here, we now have all of our assets, and we can control them by interacting with this device control layer. So auto enable for AVO1 would go here. And I'll just touch on mode, why mode isn't included. And the mode of a quarter turn valve, whether it's normally open, normally closed, or dual position, you wouldn't change that during runtime. So that's going to be something that's set up on the instance, on the interface of this block for this instance, but it won't be programmatically changed whilst the PLC is running. We'll be sticking hard values in to say this is how this one's working, and it won't be changed via a variable. Whereas our requested position, fail position, and no control position, whilst the fail and no control are unlikely to change, there are use cases and scenarios where we might want to say, if you're in the middle of doing this, then you need to fail open. Whereas if you're in the middle of doing this, you need to fail closed. And because a modulating valve is just driven by an analog signal, it's capable of on-the-fly configuration changes, whereas a quarter turn valve that's normally open is normally open because of a mechanical spring, and that's not going to change no matter what we do with our PLC. That's why that's not included. So just clearing that up. And yeah, the same for MVO2, auto enable, auto enable would go here. Requested position would go there. Fail position onto the fail position, and no control position onto the no control position. I've made a mistake in the UDT and left these all as booleans, which they shouldn't be. So we'll just update that now. These should be reals because we're dealing with percent. And then I will just update the control layer. And we can now see that they're all happy in there. And basically that means that we can now go to our sequences. We can pass in this one typed variable here with the UDT device control layer and know that we can access and control our devices from our sequences without having to have the managers in there, without having to have additional interlocking or accessing global data or anything like that. We are just passing a reference and interacting with that reference. When we come to do the sequence managing, that's where the control layer will be used, and we'll interact with that inside the sequences so that we're not making global calls or having to create any additional variables in order to interact with our devices that need an output request.